I joined the table of my wife and her affair. Their faces were priceless when they saw me. I want to share a part of my life that has been both heartbreaking and eye-opening. I never thought I would be in this situation, but here I am, sharing my story with you all. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Matthew, a 36-year-old. I thought I had a happy marriage until I found out my wife was cheating. My wife's name is Catherine and she's 35. We've been married for a decade, but I discovered her infidelity recently. I always thought we had a perfect relationship. We met in high school but didn't start dating until college. We got married shortly after we graduated. We were the perfect couple. We had date nights, a great sex life, and loved each other. I thought we respected and took care of each other. I ran the family business which I took over from my dad shortly after graduating. It was so successful that I didn't even need a second income to supplement it. Catherine also worked with me and loved it. I also have 3 kids aged 9, 7, and 4. I'm a great dad and I spend a lot of time with them. I play with them like I'm a kid myself, so we have a very close bond. They often prefer to talk to me about things rather than their mum. That's not because she's a bad mum, it's just because I'm more. Of course, like any marriage, ours had its ups and downs, but we made sure to talk things out whenever there was a problem. The last big argument we had was about our kids and how they seemed closer to me than to Catherine. She felt a bit hurt, thinking that as their mum she should have a stronger bond with them. We talked it out. After a long chat with Catherine about her concerns and reassuring her that it wasn't about playing favorites, we tried to spend more quality time together as a family, which seemed to help. Looking back, I wonder if that argument was a sign of deeper issues simmering beneath the surface. Maybe Catherine's feelings of being sidelined led her to seek attention elsewhere. Maybe she was looking for attention elsewhere. It's crazy to think that despite all my efforts to communicate, there were unresolved issues that might have played a part in what happened later. I wish we had dug deeper into those feelings back then, and maybe sought professional help earlier. It might have helped us avoid the mess we're in now. Our sex life was a big part of our marriage. Catherine and I were happy with what we had in the bedroom. Every now and then, she'd suggest having an open relationship or trying a threesome. I always declined because I believed in being faithful to each other. I made sure she knew where I stood, and she seemed okay with it, just curious about exploring different things. It never caused any major issues. When there were any major conflicts between us, we were open about our wants and limits, which I thought was important for a strong relationship. Hi Reddit, I want to share a part of my life that has been both heartbreaking and eye-opening. I never thought I would be in this situation, but here I am sharing my story with you all. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Matthew, a 36-year-old. I'm 36 years old. I thought I had a happy marriage until I discovered my wife was unfaithful. My wife's name is Catherine, and she's 35. We've been married for a decade, and up until I found out about her affair, I thought we had a perfect relationship. We met in high school but didn't start dating until college. We got married shortly after graduation, and I took over my family business from my dad. It was successful to say the least. On the other hand, I didn't need another income to supplement it. Catherine also worked with me and loved the job. We had a comfortable life, we were financially stable, and we had 3 beautiful kids aged 9, 7, and 4. I really enjoyed being a father. My kids meant the world to me. Our relationship wasn't without its challenges. One of the biggest discussions we had was about our kids' closeness to me. Catherine felt a bit left out, but we talked it over, and we resolved it like adults. Communication was really important to us, and in the bedroom things were great. We were happy with our sex life. Catherine brought up the idea of a relationship or a threesome a couple of times, but I made it clear that I believed in monogamy. She understood and respected my stance, even though I was running a successful business. I always made time for my family. I was never too busy for them, and was always there for them. I even gave Catherine's family members a helping hand, despite feeling a bit guilty for having more privilege growing up. But despite all this, the foundation of trust in our marriage crumbled when I discovered Catherine's affair. It was a devastating blow that shattered my world and left me questioning everything. I've always strived to be a supportive and present husband and father. Despite I've always made time for my family, even though I have a successful business that demands a lot of my time. I've never neglected my wife and kids. No matter how busy I got, I made sure to carve out moments for us to connect, whether it was a quiet dinner at home or a family outing on weekends. I believed in being generous, not just with material things but also with my emotions and support. I was also generous with Catherine's family, because I knew that my upbringing had been more privileged than hers. I was taught the value of hard work and giving back, and I sometimes felt a twinge of guilt for the advantages I had compared to Catherine. However, I tried to channel that into being a better partner and provider. I always had Catherine's back and encouraged her dreams and goals, even when they changed frequently. She was always changing her mind about new interests, but she often left them half-finished. One week she'd be into one thing, and the next she'd be into something else. Even so, I supported her emotionally and financially, even when I knew that they wouldn't last. We communicated openly, respected each other's opinions and boundaries, and I tried to empathize with her and see things from her perspective. Our relationship was filled with tenderness and affection. I made sure she felt valued and praised her to boost her confidence. I took responsibility for all my actions and kept my promises. I was someone she could rely on, and I shared household chores and handled most parenting duties despite my busy work schedule. I paid all the bills and shouldered the financial burden without complaint. I'm sharing all this to paint a picture of our seemingly perfect life. I never thought my life would be rocked by infidelity. When Catherine started cheating, I noticed but didn't think it was anything serious. I guess I always thought our relationship was so good that cheating would never cross either of our minds. At least it never crossed mine, so I thought it would be the same for her. I noticed the same thing with her, but it was like a switch had been flipped. Catherine's behavior started to change, and at first I brushed it off as normal. But then I couldn't ignore the signs. She was glued to her phone, always smiling at messages or notifications, which was unusual for her. I guess those are always the first signs that a partner's cheating. Social media became her new favorite pastime, which is something she never cared much about. Before, it wasn't just the phone. She was also more guarded and secretive. We used to share everything, even our passwords. But then she changed her phone password and avoided letting me near it. When I asked, she either dodged or outright refused. This created a barrier between us. I was baffled and disheartened. Then she stopped. After she stopped sharing her location, I asked her about it. She said her friends had advised her against it, saying it was controlling. I was confused and a bit annoyed because, for me, sharing locations wasn't about control but about safety. What if something happened, and I needed to find her quickly? That's why we used to share our locations. I tried to explain my concerns, but she stuck to her decision and even warned me not to bring it up with her friends, saying she'd get upset if I did. I thought that was odd because her friends had never meddled in our relationship before. It felt like she was hiding something, and her sudden change just fueled my suspicions. Looking back, I now realized her friends weren't behind her decision. It was just an excuse she made up. Her friends never said anything about it. Sharing locations, Catherine was being controlling. She didn't want to be caught out, so she joined in to stop me from confronting her friends. She'd stopped sharing her location. I couldn't keep tabs on where she was. I trusted her enough not to check her location unless it was necessary. But her sudden change in secretive behavior raised red flags. I couldn't help but wonder where she went during her free time. I also noticed that she was staying late at the office, which was unusual because she usually avoided overtime and would push tasks to the next day. What bothered me more was that we had other employees who could handle tasks, so her staying late seemed it was unnecessary though, since technically she wasn't breaking any rules. I didn't confront her about it. Then she became distant, as if I didn't exist, no matter what I said or did. It was as if she couldn't hear me, or worse, she chose not to. I tried everything to reach her, having conversations and talking things through calmly, even suggesting therapy to work on our issues together. But nothing seemed to penetrate the wall she had built around herself. The woman I loved, my wife Catherine, had become a stranger in our own home. Her vibrant presence had now been replaced. She was distant, and it was confusing. She wasn't just saying things, she was also acting differently. She stopped engaging with our family, spending more time alone or on her phone. I couldn't understand why she had changed so drastically. We used to share everything from our deepest fears to our wildest dreams. Now it felt like she was shutting me out completely. Even the kids noticed the shift in her behavior, which only added to my confusion and concern. Despite the suspicion about her cheating, I couldn't understand what could have caused such a drastic transformation. It was like trying to piece together a puzzle with missing pieces. Each attempt left me more confused than before. When I finally caught up with my wife, it was just a coincidence. It was the kind of coincidence that you'd think only happens in movies, not in real life. My best friend, let's call him Bobby for the sake of privacy, and I were pretty close until he got a better job offer and had to move away from our town. That meant we couldn't keep in touch as much as we used to. However, Bobby recently came back to town, and we had been trying to catch up on. It had been ages since Bobby and I had seen each other, and just as he was back in town, this happened. I'd taken the day off to catch up with him, but Catherine had gone to work. I didn't expect it to lead to what I saw. I'd wanted to talk to Bobby about Catherine's behavior, to see if there was anything I was missing or had overlooked. I also wanted to tell him about my suspicions because at this point, I was thinking that Catherine was most likely cheating on me. I just didn't know with whom. Bobby then suggested we go out for lunch. We agreed to grab lunch at a place we both knew well, one we used to go to a lot when Bobby was still around. It felt a bit nostalgic stepping into the restaurant, like taking a trip down memory lane. I hadn't been there much after Bobby moved away. Stepping into the restaurant, I felt a sense of nostalgia. We chatted and reminisced about old times. My eyes scanned the room, taking in the familiar surroundings, until they landed on a sight that made my heart drop. There she was, my wife, Catherine, sitting intimately close to a man I didn't recognize. They were so engrossed in each other, it was like they were in their own little world. I first froze for a moment, trying to process what I was seeing. My mind started racing. I searched for any reasonable explanation. But deep down, I knew the way they interacted, and the way they looked at each other painted a clear picture that I couldn't deny. It was like a slap in the face. I had already had my suspicions, but nothing could have prepared me for eventually finding out that my suspicions were true. Deep down, I had hoped that I was wrong, that I was just sensitive, but I was right. I stood there, blocked from their view, watching as they exchanged gestures that were too intimate for my comfort. Catherine, who had told me she was going to work, was here, sharing moments with another man, feeding him as if they were a couple. I felt disbelief, heartache, and anger all at once. It felt like a punch in the gut. My initial reaction was to just walk away and deal with it at home, but anger got the better of me. Bobby noticed my hesitation and urged me to confront them, so I did. He had noticed my pause, and now he too followed my gaze to the booth. Without saying anything, I decided I couldn't just ignore this. I had to speak to Catherine and find out what was going on. I walked up to their table, put on a fake smile, and sat down in the booth. Catherine was, to say the least, a little flustered. She stumbled over her words, trying to come up with an excuse. I wasn't having any of it, so I asked her to introduce me to her friend, but she couldn't manage more than stammering. The tension was thick, but I kept pushing, trying to maintain my composure, even though I was boiling inside. Her partner was quiet, but he kept staring at Catherine. He looked wide-eyed. Despite my repeated requests, nobody said a word. Long story short, Catherine left the restaurant without saying goodbye, leaving me feeling pretty annoyed. My mood was already ruined, and now I didn't even want to eat anything. I felt like I would throw up if I tried. I told Bobby I was heading home because I figured Catherine would probably beat me there. I'd reached my limit. This wasn't the first time I'd suspected something, but now there was no denying it. When I got home, Catherine was already there, crying her heart out in the living room. It was clear she knew she messed up big time, but her tears weren't going to change anything. I didn't beat around the bush. I told her straight up that I wanted her out of the house. Cheating is a total deal breaker for me, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. She tried to spin some story about the guy being just a friend, but I wasn't buying it. I called her out on how embarrassed she looked. I went to the restaurant and asked her why she acted like that. If it was all innocent, then she came up with an excuse about me being aggressive, which just annoyed me even more. I hadn't raised my voice or thrown a fit. I simply sat down and asked for an introduction. How's that aggressive? She kept saying sorry, claiming it was a one-time thing. I told her to pack her stuff and leave. She cried, but I wasn't having it. I wasn't going to let her guilt trip me into forgiveness. I stood my ground and made it clear that she had to go. No second chances. Catherine tried to involve the kids in the conversation, using them as a bargaining chip. She said she couldn't live without them, but I saw through the manipulation. I calmly explained that taking the kids away from their familiar routine would only add more chaos to an already messy situation. I suggested we could work out a fair arrangement for custody and visitation, but that discussion could wait. She needed to leave, and she kept pleading and begging. I guess she was hoping I would have a change of heart. I remained firm and told her that our focus should be on sorting out the logistics later, not in the heat of the moment. After about 5 minutes of back and forth, she finally realized I wasn't going to change my mind. She gathered her belongings but tried to take only some items at first. I told her she'd have to take everything that belonged to her. I knew that's what she'd try to do, saying she wanted to come back later to pick up the rest. She tried to take her remaining stuff, but I wasn't letting her. She packed up all her stuff to the porch and then called an Uber. She was still trying to talk to me after she left. I finally realized what had just happened. I cried a bit, to be honest. I don't even know what I'll tell the kids when they come back. They come back and, of course, want to know where their mom is. I'm devastated, Reddit. I thought I knew my wife, but it turns out she's been cheating on me. I'm at a loss for words. Update: it was a huge help to me when I posted that I was feeling lost and hurt. Discovering that my wife was cheating was a really tough blow, and I needed somewhere to vent. I never expected the post to get so many responses, but I'm really grateful for every message, piece of advice and encouragement I received. Many of you suggested I seek legal advice, and I've taken that on board. I've taken your advice, and I'll be reaching out to my lawyer soon to start the divorce process and serve my wife with the papers. It's a very necessary step towards moving forward. I've also had a heart-to-heart with the kids in a way they could understand. I explained that Mom and Dad need some time apart because of grown-up. My kids are doing well, but I'm open to family therapy down the road. It's been about a week since everything happened, and I'm still processing it all. My friends, especially Bobby, have been checking in on me, which means a lot. I've noticed some of you asking about my wife's whereabouts. Honestly, I haven't bothered to find out. Given her extravagant spending habits, I assume she's either crashing with friends or back at her parents' place. I might check in eventually, but right now I'm focusing on taking care of myself and the kids. She's been trying to reach out, but I'm not ready to communicate yet. I know I'll have to eventually, especially for the kids' sake, but for now I need some space. I just wanted to give you all a quick update. Thanks again for the overwhelming support. It means more than you know. I haven't updated in a while, so I appreciate all the concern and messages checking in on me. I want to assure everyone that I'm okay. Sorry for the radio silence. Here's a quick rundown of what's been going on. Firstly, my wife was served with divorce papers. Let's just say she wasn't happy about it. I've received numerous voice messages from her, ranging from cursing at me to apologies, tears, and pleas not to end our relationship. However, the truth is that she's the one who crossed the line, not me. Her family also reached out to me with apologies and hopes of reconciliation. I made it clear that forgiveness is not an option at this stage. I'm not interested in discussing this right now or anytime soon. I just want to move forward with the divorce. I also reached out to my own family, who I hadn't spoken to since this all started. It wasn't an easy conversation, but I needed their support. I made sure they understood not to let my wife into their houses if she shows up spouting some lie. As for my wife's living situation, she's staying with a friend, but that's not going well. She's struggling to pay her share of the rent. It's not my concern, but I did find it amusing in a bitter way. She deserves it. Work has been a good distraction for me. I've been focusing on projects and spending quality time with my kids whenever I can. It's helping me cope and move forward slowly but surely. Just to be clear, my wife and I no longer work together. It was impossible to continue working together after what happened. I hope that clears things up. Thanks to everyone for the support and understanding during this challenging time. It's been a while since I've posted here, so this might be my final update. I'm more of a lurker on Reddit, so posting updates feels a bit strange for me, but I owe it to everyone who's been there for me, offering support and advice. So I'd like to catch you up on what's been happening in the past few months. First of all, my wife and I went through the court process, as many of you pointed out. Depending on where you live, Cheating can have a huge impact on divorce proceedings. Fortunately, I live in a state where cheating carries weight in court. To cut a long story short, she didn't get much in the settlement, just a bit of alimony since I earn significantly more and have assets. It wasn't about winning or losing, but I was relieved that I got to keep custody of the kids, who mean the world to me. I'm sure they feel more settled too. We've been in family therapy trying to navigate this whole new thing. My wife sees the kids occasionally on weekends, but it's not consistent. It seems like the therapy is helping, or maybe the kids are just adjusting well. Either way, things feel more normal now. I've been trying to reconnect with friends and move forward. It's been surprisingly smooth considering everything I've worked on, like forgiving her and moving on. It's been working for me. I hardly dwell on the past anymore. I also keep getting the same question. I never met the guy before or after that day at the restaurant. I couldn't track him down either, but honestly, it's not something I care about anymore. I want to thank you all for the incredible support you gave me during a tough time. I'm just about to head out to my kids' school play, so I'll leave you with this quick update. Thanks again.